Welcome to Cyber Talks by Devoteam, talks that go beyond the buzzwords to what really matters in cyber. Today we are tackling a topic that's reshaping cybersecurity in Europe, DORA and NIS2, the cyber regulations that are changing the game. Joining me today is Ines Segers, Unit Director of Devoteam Cyber Trust Belgium and also our Global Head of GRC Practice. With deep experience across cybersecurity, architecture, and regulation, Ine is perfectly placed to help us decode these new frameworks and what they mean in practice. We'll explore the key requirements, the biggest challenges, and how organizations can move from compliance to real resilience. Ine, welcome. Let's go into it.
Thank you, Rui.
Very, very happy to have you, in fact, on board. So to start with, could you help us to better understand what are DORA and NIS and why do they matter?
Well, actually, NIS2 and DORA, these are regulations and directives, and they're sort of what the same, but also a bit different. DORA, which actually became applicable in January this year, is entirely focused on the financial sector, while NIS2 is focusing more on other sectors, which are critical infrastructure, could be logistics, could be chemicals, could be healthcare, and that kind of services. Aims towards different sectors, but all in all with the same purpose. And the purpose is to enhance the cybersecurity maturity of our organizations and also to enhance the digital operational resiliency. So the fact that you can deal with cyber incidents or with other incidents that impact your operational ways to make sure that you are prepared and that the impact is as minimal as possible. Because the financial sector, but also critical sectors, are serving the public. And all in all, it's a way to protect the public from cyber incidents which could have a serious impact on our day-to-day life.
That's great. So in fact, these regulations are protecting the European users, in fact, right?
Indeed.
That's great. How will these regulations impact financial institutions and critical infrastructures? How do they get impacted?
Well, they need to put in place quite some stuff related to processes, to roles and responsibilities, but also related to security controls. And there are a couple of main topics in both NIS2 or DORA, which is all about IC risk management. ICT risk management is the main topic you need to put in place. So you need to know what you have as assets in your organization, prepared on data encryption, making sure you have backups, that you can restore these backups when necessary, do the necessary security controls on your network. Access control is important, but also the people. It's all about awareness, cybersecurity training and awareness, so that people know how to look at it to detect possible phishing. It's also about incident reporting, making sure that when there is an incident, that the right people are involved, that the right communication is done, that the right reporting is done to the legislations. Another point is operational testing, making sure that you test it upfront so that you are aware of possible vulnerabilities, that you are aware of possible gaps within your processes for incident handling. Then another point, which is fairly new for the NIS2 and the DORA, is third-party risk management. We've seen it in the past with the Log4j and with the CrowdStrike incidents that actually started within a third party and evolved through the digital connectivity with third parties within your organization. So making sure that you also assess your third parties, your vendors, in order to enforce them to create some maturity on cyber resilience as well.
But Ine, why do you believe that we need a regulation for that? Isn't it that a bit like, you need to brush your teeth every day? Why do you need a regulation to make companies brush their teeth?
Well, we all know that you have to have a certain maturity and cyber resilience to avoid any incidents or to be prepared for any incident. But we see that in many cases, the board and senior management is not fully aware of the risk and the impact, so they need to be involved. And when they are involved, then they will make sure that there is budget to make sure that you do the necessary security controls and that you have the processes. And we see in many organizations that the board is not involved, that the CISO doesn't get enough budget. And by enforcing this, we hope that it will facilitate more the means for the people who are working on the floor with information security that they have the necessary funding and the necessary assets.
That's great. Yeah. Also, I've been hearing that DORA NIS2 level setting the arena, because there are some organizations that are investing less on this kind of requirements and make them maybe price-wise more competitive. But that doesn't mean that they are more resilient. So some people defend the argument that these regulations are level setting the game for everyone. If you want to play the game, you need to invest a certain amount of your resources on cybersecurity, on resilience, on risk management, on the topics that you referred. Do you agree with this mindset of level setting?
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of harmonization, and with that level setting, there will be a harmonization across the EU, but also it will create trust in collaborating with each other. So it's a sort of trust setting that we understand, that we believe that the parties we're working with are also doing the same effort to build the cyber resilience and the maturity.
Definitely, makes all sense. And you were referring to the fact that if these things are regulatory, then the right budget will come and these topics will be adequately addressed on the table of the boards and who decides. But what happens if an organization fails to comply?
Well, first of all, if you fail to comply, there's a high risk of a cyber incident, because cyber attackers, cyber criminals are always looking around. It's like a burglar walking around your house trying to find the weakest point to get in. So people who don't do the effort to comply are also the highest risk. But there's another thing, there's penalties, and these penalties are put in place to really enforce organization to comply to the rules and the regulations, and these penalties can go very high. For NIS2 and DORA, they can go up to 2% of the annual turnover of the previous fiscal year, which can go into millions. For NIS2, it can go up to 10 million. But that's not all. Individuals, board members, are also liable and can also receive personal penalties. That can go up from 500,000 to even 2 million. Another point, and maybe worthwhile mention, is that critical third-party ICT service providers can also have fines if they fail to support the organizations with their ICT services. So they can also face penalties up to 5 million. And then there are like specific violations. If you fail to report your incident, or if you neglect the due diligence of third-party risk management, or if you don't do the operational resilience testing, that will incur specific violations, also going up to 2 million. So this is really important.
Definitely. And in practice, how can cybersecurity teams operationalize these regulatory requirements in practical terms? How do you think that they can address this?
Well, it's quite challenging. First of all, scope and applicability, like what are your critical assets, which are less critical assets, but also understanding the regulations is very difficult. DORA and NIS2 give you the regulation what needs to be done, but not how it needs to be done. And then in addition to that, NIS2 is a directive. That means that each and every country need to transpose this directive into local laws, with the result that not every country will have the same local law on NIS2 and the same controls that needs to be compliant. So for international organizations, this increases the complexity, because if you have entities in different countries, you need to comply with the specific regulations of each and every country. Very complex. Also, the way you understand these regulations can be a bit ambiguous and can be understood differently by one organization or the other organization.
Can do a slightly different interpretation, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed. And then, another challenge is the budget for it, because it requires a lot of work. Put in place processes, document the processes, training the people to follow these processes. You need to have knowledgeable people. Talent scarcity is also a big problem in cybersecurity, as well as you need to have internal people, making them available to work on this, to make sure that the compliancy is put in order for when an audit comes.
But that's also where technology technology is at the service of cyber, and nowadays AI is also at the service of cyber, and we start to see it being used every time more. So in your opinion, what is the role of the GRC platforms in helping organizations to manage this quite complex compliance issues?
Well, GRC platforms enable you to create a central repository. It will allow you to put all the controls, the regulations, the mapping of the regulations with maybe your frameworks that you already use within the organization, like NIST or ISO 27000 or ISO 9000 or even the EU AI Act if you talk about AI. So a GRC platform can actually be the centralized dashboard to maintain everything, to making sure that there is accountability, a responsibility of the people, that they follow up, that you do version control of your policies, for example. One place where everything sits, and this also facilitates audits and evidence collection. So when there is an incident, at that point, you can easily use a GRC platform for evidence, and you can facilitate the audit by putting everything in place from one SIG point, where you can actually connect to all the documents, processes, trainings, and what have you to show that you are compliant.
I'm sure that it can reduce the manual labor and focusing more where it really matters and supporting people on these quite complex operational tasks. To finalize, I would like you to tell us about some practical steps that you would suggest for organizations to prepare for upcoming regulatory changes. Like, you know that the number of credits that we have where we can place our bets are limited. So in practical terms, what would be the key areas where you would suggest organizations to be focused for the upcoming regulatory changes?
Well, first of all, embed this in your change management program. And if you don't have a change management program, I would highly advise to create one so that it is clear the roles and responsibilities are assigned so that people know the ownership. It should be a cross-functional team, not only IT people, not only security people, but the whole business should be involved there. And creating one formalized process in order to be agile enough to adapt towards changes. Also, a gap analysis and prioritization. If changes come up, you need to prioritize where to put your focus, where to put your budget, so that you can actually create a strategic roadmap and an action plan to comply to these coming changes. There is a very complex environment of all kinds of regulations and directives and frameworks that you want to follow. So in that complex environment, I think a GRC platform can facilitate that and can also facilitate upcoming changes for the future, because these platforms can allow to create some sort of packages of compliance so that you can continuously monitor your compliance towards all these different regulations.
That's so great, so valuable content. Thank you very much, Ine. We are then finalizing our episode of Cyber Talks by Devoteam, talks that go beyond the buzzwords to what really matters in cyber. Today we had myself, Shantilal, as the host of this episode, and Ine Segers. Thank you very much, Ine. I hope that everyone enjoyed the episode as much as we did making this one. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you, Rui. It was a pleasure.